we have hope, and our hope will not put us to shame.
Mm,
And so
mm,
we
mm.
can rest. We can rest, and we can speak that to a world that seems so hopeless. Like,
Yeah.
it seems so hopeless. We can say, no, there's something better. This earth is not our home.
Mm,
And
mhm,
this is, we're going to endure this hard time,
mhm,
but
mhm.
we have hope.
Hi everyone, this is Aaron Lee, and on behalf of Solo Network, I interviewed Trillia Newbell. She's an author and speaker, and we discussed her book, Beautifully Distinct. We talked about Christian worldview, cultural engagement, and she also gave some encouragement to writers. Thanks for joining.
Trillia, how are you doing today?
I'm doing really well, Aaron. Thanks for having me.
I'm so thankful that we got a chance to get together. You're in Nashville, right? You're in Nashville.
I am in the Nashville area, so I'm not
Oh,
quite
got you,
in
got you.
Nashville. Yeah, yeah.
Right,
But
right on. Yeah, it was a little bit difficult for us to sync up the times, but here we are, and I'm
because you're in
glad that we're
California,
being.
is that right?
Yes, yes, I am. I am in California. I've been to Nashville once in my life. It was for the Getty Sing conference, and it was awesome. It was great.
That's so fun. Can I tell you something really neat?
Yeah.
I'm actually emceeing their conference this year.
No way.
Yeah.
They didn't announce you were going to MC that.
Well, I think it's been a little bit last minute about my
Mm,
addition to do that.
mm.
I was just a speaker, so I was
Yeah.
doing a breakout, and then they needed someone to MC because everything went global. And
Right.
since I'm here and they're here, when they're not in Ireland,
Right.
so that's a lot of fun. I'm excited.
Yeah. Oh, that's awesome. Well, breaking news, Trillia Newbell on hosting the Getty Sing conference global now. That's awesome. I'm really looking forward to that. But today I actually want to talk to you about your book, the book that you wrote, Beautifully Distinct. I have it right here. But before we get into this, why don't you tell our audience a little bit about yourself in case they don't know you maybe.
Yeah. Well, my name is Trillia, and I live in the Nashville area, which we've already established. I have 2 children. I've been married for 17 years. My son is 14. I have a daughter who is 10, and I write and speak. So that's me in a nutshell. That's probably too much of a nutshell, but yeah.
No, that's perfect. That's perfect. That is your life, writing and speaking, and family, of course, right? And I think okay, so this book is interesting because you're actually the general editor for this book. So you actually have a bunch of women, and you even have women of color speaking to a lot of issues. Can you just give us this book maybe in a nutshell? I want really our audience to check it out and see what it's all about.
Yeah, so he's right. I also have it on me. I edited this book, and this has been a book probably, gosh, it seems like 2+ years in the making.
Mm-hmm.
So I started it, and then I stopped it for a while, and then we started again, and then the Good Book Company was gracious to pick it up. And so it really, the Beautifully Distinct is about living in the world, right? But not of the world. So being involved in the world, and how do we discern what we are watching, what we are reading, how we're engaging in the world, and how we do it in such a way that is distinct from the world. So we are Christians, and we want to be beautifully distinct. And I love that they captured this beautifully, because we can be distinct in a not beautiful way, right? In a harsh, in an unloving, we can do that, but we want to be beautifully distinct, set apart from the world in a way that honors God. That's not one sentence, but that's it in a nutshell.
Yeah, no, and it's a really great book. I don't want to detail the book in this conversation. People can read it themselves. But what I want us to do is maybe elaborate on the conversations that you're having here, and maybe just look at the big picture and how we can apply the big picture of the book to our audience here. So let's just jump into this right here. In the introduction, okay, into the introduction to this book, you wrote you didn't fully understand what your faith meant for you and how you related to the rest of the world. How you would relate your faith to the rest of the world, I'm saying. Can you elaborate on this and how this might be coming to the forefront, especially today during this particular moment in history for other Christians?
You know, it's interesting. One thing that you will know, and maybe your audience will now know, is that when you write a book, you write it and you don't quite remember everything you wrote. So when you say that sentence, my first thought was, I must have meant before I became a Christian. And then as I became a Christian, I was gaining understanding of how to live in the world as a believer. That is which we all do, right? So we're all learning what it means to be like Jesus. And so right now, it informs the way I communicate with other people about politics. It informs the way I engage in social media. It informs the way I think about all sorts of things because of a Christian worldview. So I'm thinking about things through a biblical lens, or that's what I'm praying that I will do, because I'm not going to get this right, and neither will you or anyone else. We're not going to get it 100% right 100% of the time. So it's the goal of, and so that to me is how I have grown, is just trying to discern what is it that the Lord would have me do, think, say, engage in a way that glorifies him. And I wouldn't have thought to do those things before becoming a Christian.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, there's a lot of topics that you cover in here, and we should think carefully about all these topics. I like how you divided the book, actually, that you divided it into 3 parts. It was being thoughtful, which included how we should think about movies and food and sex and work and literature or reading. You said listening well, which is talking about hospitality and dealing with immigrants and race issues. And then also speaking well, which what you said, social media, beauty, and telling your story. I want to ask you right now, like today, what areas, that we just mentioned are particularly important, do you think?
Every single one of them. Think about what we're in. So let's start with being thoughtful. Right now, conspiracy theories are running rampant. We have got to be thinkers, thinking Christians, discerning, reading, and asking, okay, what is true? What is right? What is pure? We got to be thoughtful. Listening well. I don't know in my lifetime a time that has been more confusing and divisive regarding racial issues. Of course, we know that this is nothing new under the sun. So that's why I said in my lifetime, because, it's been worse, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. But so we need to try to understand. You don't gain understanding by speaking all the time. So we need to be listening well. We need to gain understanding. And then speaking well. Right now, right today, social media is one of the number one ways that we're communicating with each other. Now, of course, 7 billion people on this earth, everyone's not on social media. Yeah. And so we can also overstate that to a certain degree, but millions of people are engaging with one another via this medium. So we want to make sure that we are speaking well, and there's a lot of people who are bearing false witness, who are disobeying God in the way that they speak about other people. So again, we need to learn how to speak and speak well. So there's a lot going on, I think, that this book touches on that we need to be thinking through today.
Yeah. And I mean, you said this book was years in the making. Obviously, you can't predict what today is going to look like, but it speaks so powerfully to all of the issues still. And I think that's why it's such an important and timely book to be out there and for people to check out. I do appreciate how you said that we need to listen. We really need to listen up to people. And so I'm looking at the contributors in this book, and they're women and women of color particularly. And I appreciate that they're, putting themselves out there and writing so people like me can read it and listen to the conversations and from these different points of view. I want to ask you, how would you encourage women, particularly for our audience, which would be maybe younger Asian American college women, to speak up and discuss these issues, the issues that you're talking about in your book, especially in church context where maybe these issues aren't, discussed?
Yeah, so I'll start by saying the book is not probably majority women of color. It's just also, so it's probably 50-50 women of color and white women. And
You're right.
Yeah. So, but in regards, there is, and it's always very important for me to include the perspectives of all sorts of people from varying. Yeah. So I'm really excited about that. So you asked me, what would I say to women of color about speaking up in these topics? I would just say, trust Jesus and speak. And so I think there can be a temptation to the fear of man. And Proverbs says that the fear of man lays a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is safe. So we are safe in the Lord, and we can speak in a way. Again, we take all of the word, right? We consider all of God's calling. God tells us to love him with all our hearts, mind, soul, and strength, and to love our neighbor as ourselves. So we can speak in a way that is true and loving. And so I would just encourage anyone who, if there is something, prayerfully consider your words and prayerfully consider when to speak. A lot of people quote, and I don't know if this is Martin Luther King Jr. or who, but silence is compliance. Is that the word? But yeah. And so there's a time to speak. And so, and there is a time to wait and not. So I think you just have to discern, okay, when is that time? And what should I say? And also, and this is really important, there's probably, so there are about 20 issues going on at the same time. We cannot, and we're not really called to be engaging on every single thing. Yeah. So ask the Lord, what is it that you could contribute to? And what is it that you're passionate about? And speak to that. Because there are so many things, it would be overwhelming if we're just constantly trying to engage on every single topic all the time. So I do want to relieve some people of that temptation or that fear. Also, this is also a fear that, if I don't speak up on every single thing, then it will seem like I don't care. Well, that's not true. You can pray and you can entrust it to the Lord.
Yeah. And I think I really like that where you said, even if you don't speak up, it doesn't necessarily mean that you don't care, right? Like, I think people will assume, maybe they're not, if they don't talk about it, that means they don't care. And that's not true. That's totally not true. I think what we're talking about here is cultural engagement, right? And so that means we need to listen and we need to think before we speak wisely to the culture as well. But okay, as I was reading this, I'm asking a question here where there was a sentence, I think, in the book where it says, practicing cultural engagement is a means to win people for Christ. And I think that's great because we're not just, speaking out to Christians here. No, we're trying to be salt and light to the world. How would you encourage those of us, and again, I'm speaking to our audience, Asian American churches or communities where maybe we don't look at these cultural engagement issues, especially in terms of maybe evangelism. How would you encourage these communities to do that? And then what does it look like during this COVID-19 time where it is hard to interact with the maybe community, at large and in person?
Yeah, well, that's a great question. So not understanding everyone's context and everyone's culture.
Right.
So I'm speaking in limited experience or in a narrow knowledge here. So I would say, if you asked how do you wisely engage in other people culture for Jesus, well, I mean, I do think that when we, if you're going to speak or say something, the manner in which it's said can show love. Now, people are going to be against whatever, and this is something you need to understand. People are going to be against truth. Jesus said that if the world hated me, why wouldn't they hate you? So there is a chance that you're going to be rejected as you speak something that is true.
Right.
And so we all are going to experience that, and I'm not as concerned about that as I am about the manner in which we say that truth. So you can say something that is true in an offensive way. The chances are that you may not. You just, again, not knowing the context that you are in, or your general culture. I would say what you're needing is boldness. Boldness to actually just say anything. And so I would just encourage you towards boldness to speak and to care. I think one of the reasons that a lot of people don't say anything at all is that they're apathetic. So there's a thought that it doesn't really affect me, so I'm not going to say anything at all. And so we would need to discern that in our hearts is, do we care about our neighbor? Or are we most concerned about our community and our situation? Because if you care about your neighbor, you're going to touch someone who's not a Christian.
Yeah,
you're going to get out of that. You're going to get out of your bubble. Okay. In our current situation where we're socially distanced or churches are being closed or whatever.
Right. Yeah.
I do think, again, how you engage with that essential worker or your public, gosh, does it matter? If you go to a store and masks are required, wear the mask. I just think there are some things that we can do to show our neighbors that we love them, even if we are kind of like, this doesn't matter to me so much, but it matters to the community. So we just need to think about these things. Like, what hills are we worth dying on? Now, I do understand that there are lots of medical reasons and there are some emotional reasons why those various things but you do just need to count the cost there and think about how you're engaging with those people who are on the ground working, whether it's in grocery stores or shops or mechanics or whoever is, then I think that's really important. And then in regards to just community in general, I think we can still be a part of a community. It's just going to take a lot more effort. So it takes just a lot more effort. So one of the things that my husband and I have done is when we are walking in our neighborhood, if someone starts to talk to us, we stop and talk rather than just move on. So that because there's a loneliness, there's people need community where they may not have that. So there's just some habits that we might have just said, hey, and passed on, but now we stop to see if they're wanting to engage more. And usually they do, because no one's seeing anyone.
We're hungry for it. So can I ask you this? It sounds as if you're saying that, it's not just necessarily speaking out into the culture, but it's really showing your actions first and getting those opportunities maybe to be able to speak. Is that correct? Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah. I mean, what does James say? Faith without action is dead. So obviously our actions speak very loud to the culture, to our neighbor. And so what we do it's not in regards to the gospel, like sharing the gospel. What we do isn't necessarily as I don't want to say.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you on that. Yeah,
okay.
yeah, I got you. Yeah.
But what we do does matter, and it does speak. And so we want to make sure that we're acting in a way that's worthy of the gospel. And we're gonna fail this. Just last week I had to repent because I called my school. My daughter's in school and we're online and everything.
I can't.
Well, so everything's a little bit crazy, and their systems, they are doing the best they can, but their systems can't handle it. And so it freezes or it cuts her out. So she's barely getting an education right now. And, and yet I called the school and I was like, what is going on? I can't get her online. And now she's absent, but she's not absent. We've been here before. And I was just anxiety induced. And the lady was so calm. And then I was like, Lord, I can't do that. I repented. But so our actions matter. And how we're in this time, especially, I think we can be beautifully distinct. We're going to fail.
Yeah. I appreciate that because, so culture changes, the times change, our situation changes. The gospel remains the same. And it speaks to every single situation. It speaks to every single time period and culture and place. It just speaks. And I think that's what I appreciate about about your message here is that, there's all these issues and the gospel has something to say about it. And you got to think about how does it apply to it? But God's word always has something to say to what's going on in the world. It's always relevant. And so I think it's a good message that we need to hear and that will continue to be of course, needed as things get potentially worse, right? I mean, that's what we're looking at.
I kind of love that. We're like, none of us, this is really good, I think, but it's also kind of somewhat sad and a little bit funny.
It is sad. Yeah.
None of us are looking to the future with rose-colored glasses anymore. We're all like, it's going to get worse. So here we go.
Yeah. I mean, and I think it's honestly the reason why we can laugh at it, you, me, Christians, is because we have hope and our hope is in Jesus. And so that's why we can laugh at it. But yeah, you're right. It is a sad situation.
But you're exactly right. Excuse me.
Oh yeah, no problem.
I sucked in something. But you're exactly right. We have hope and our hope will not put us to shame. And so we can rest and we can speak that to a world that seems so hopeless. Like it seems so hopeless. We can say, no, there's something better. This earth is not our home. And this is, we're going to endure this hard time, but we have hope.
Yeah. The church is going to endure. I want to respect your time here. I wanted to speak really quickly. You have a new position. You're acquisitions editor at Moody Publishers now. And so you're helping get Christ and God's word out to people and a lot of good books and resources. I want to speak to that role really quick and maybe get some insight from you as the acquisitions editor. You wrote on your blog recently how you're limited and you can't write on every subject. I want to ask you, how would you encourage writers, maybe women or women of colors particularly, to find their niche?
Yeah. You know what? I'm going to speak to men and women. How about that?
Okay. Yeah. Let's do it.
Well, one, I acquire men too. So
that's the acquirement too. Yes.
Yeah, that sounds really funny.
Yeah. I got you.
I work with men and women, and it is really, I'm still laughing at that.
I got you.
Yeah, it's such a joy to get to do that. So when you're, I mean, I do think that there are some people who are, you have an ear for certain subjects. You are gifted to speak about that subject clearly. And so dive in there. If you look at my books, you'll see that I'm pretty broad. But there are a lot of topics that I would never engage in, or I'm not very gifted in, or I have no interest. That I think can help you. If you're not passionate about something, don't write, especially try to write a book about it. You will hate life if you try to do that. So don't do it. But so I think that's part of the way to discern. Another way is other people will let you know. They'll let other people will confirm or affirm or that calling, and they'll say, and you'll hear it either if you write a blog post or an article and they come back to you, that was really encouraging, that spurred me on, that whatever it is. So listening to other people encourage you also helps. But if you start down a road and you're miserable, don't do it, because it's not going to serve you or your reader. So that's one way to discern.
Yeah. Thank you so much for sharing your wisdom on that in the publishing world, and just your general wisdom on life and everything that comes with being a Christian. Honestly, there's so much to learn, and I appreciate your voice. And I'm so glad that we got to have this conversation. Trillia, thank you so much for your time, and thank you for your book. I look forward to seeing you around at the Sing conference first, and then everywhere else that you are. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Aaron.
Bye.